Hey, how's it going? This is Collin with Those Racing Guys and CB3 Fabrication. And today we're going to go over how to install the CB3 Fabrication Hardtop for the 4th generation, also known as the ND chassis Miata. So in front of me, I have everything that comes with the kit. You have your Lexan windows, your window seals, the seal to go onto the back of the car, as well as the brackets and hardware to mount everything. You'll also get a full set of instructions that explains most of the things that we're going to be going over in this video, as well as some templates for cutting out the rear deck plates in order to install the rear hooks. On this side of the table, we have everything that we're going to be needing for our installation. You have some basic tools like some cutting blades, some Allen keys, a plastic trim removal tool. You want to make sure you have plastic because you don't want to damage things. Some medium grit sandpaper. I'm going to be using 120 today, as well as a T40 Torx key, a Sharpie, and some tape, as well as some window weld material. You can also install the top using rivets. However, I prefer using the window weld as it just gives you a much cleaner OEM style finish. And to finish it off, of course, in order to drill the rear deck plates, you need either a step bit or a hole saw. In addition to the things I have here, I'm also going to go over a couple additional steps that you can do on the top, which involve a 2-inch thick by 1/8 EPDM rubber and some neoprene. These items are going to give you a much better weatherproof, waterproof install, but they are considered optional. Now, in an ideal world, I would have wished to obviously have all of these things installed, ready to go when we ship out the tops. It is my design. I have the work actually performed by a professional shop who do high-end work. So what I'm going to try and do is show you at least how to do this if you are planning to install it yourself, how to get close to a professional finish. Okay, for step 1, we place the top on the table upside down. This is so that we can install the seal that is going to be resting on the car itself. Make sure to have a nice padded surface. We used a moving blanket just because you don't want to scratch up your top. To prep the surface, I'm going to use a little bit of isopropyl alcohol just to clean it. If you use an adhesion promoter, this will actually help the seal lay down better. So I'm going to use that throughout the process just to make sure that when I install everything, it's not going to come back off. So you can see here there is a groove that is present all the way across. This edge will make sure that it has a nice weatherproof seal, as well as reduce some of the vibrations that may be present just from the top resting on the car. Now, starting with the smaller seal, we are going to peel off one end of the backing tape, and you want to try and match it close to this edge as possible. Then we're just going to apply it a bit at a time, following this edge all the way around. You want to give it a nice medium pressure as you're going, holding it down for a few seconds at a time. This will ensure that it's bonding to the top. Now, any extra material that should be here, it's standard. We make them a little bit long just to make sure you have enough. You're just gonna trim that off with a straight edge. Now, while the top is in this position, it's a perfect time to do the first optional step, which is to take some 1/4 inch thick, medium density neoprene foam, and we're gonna place it around the keyholes that are here for the rear hooks. This will ensure that when you put the top on, you can get a nice tight seal and prevent vibrations. So we got the neoprene on here. It's not the prettiest, but you're not really gonna see it once the top is installed. It's really here more for protection for your car and the top itself. So now we're gonna get this cleaned up a little bit and we're gonna move on to step 3. So now we still have the top in this position. We're gonna start applying painter's tape around all the edges where the windows go. This is gonna be more or less for when we actually apply the urethane for the windows. We wanna make sure we're not making a mess. So we're going to tape off the perimeters to make sure it's not going to get everywhere. So you're going to actually take your Lexan as well, and you're going to place tape on the edge that is going to be setting against it. This is so that we can put a nice clean line to mark onto the tape. So once you have your window taped up, you're going to place it into position and use a Sharpie. And you're going to mark a line all the way around, following the edge of the top. This is going to be your cut line to cut back on in order to key this up, scuff it, whatever you want to call it, in order to make sure that when you put the urethane on it, it's going to adhere. So one thing to note on the piece of Lexan that goes on the back, the bottom and the top are not actually completely symmetrical. Just because of how the mold was made, we ended up having to add a little bit of a shaped cut in this. So you want to ensure to mock it into place first before you start gluing or anything else, just to ensure that you're getting the fitment that you're supposed to be getting. So just like we did on the inside, we're going to tape up the outside just for any excess urethane that we can clean it off easier. And now that we have our top all taped up and our windows marked, we're going to use our razor blade and we're going to follow just on the inside of this line we marked off, and we're going to cut through both the tape and the film. This is going to give us our surface so that we can hit it with some sandpaper to make sure that it's keyed up and it'll adhere correctly. So now that we have trimmed out all our edges and peeled off the tape and the film, we're going to use some sandpaper to etch all the way around the borders to make sure that when we apply the urethane, it's going to stick as best as it can. We're actually going to do the same thing on the top as well. So now after we cut it off, we finished our sanding, did a nice scuff job, try and get it nice and even. I went back through using just a dry paper towel or dry cloth and wiped it off. You do not want to use any type of solvent on Lexan especially, as it will eat right through it. So just be very wary of that. That's why we're just dry clothing it. And now we're getting to the step where you're going to be needing gloves. That is because we're getting ready to put on the window weld urethane. Now this is a very messy product, but it works very well. One thing that you'll want to keep in mind is this has a couple of notches on it. You're actually gonna want to cut this fairly wide, as you're gonna want a fairly wide bead when you're putting it down. If you cut a fairly thin one, it can come out really inconsistent. Just to avoid that, cut down to these lines, and you should have a plenty wide enough tip to run a good line. This is a product that when you apply it on there, to use more is actually better than using less. It's better to have extra and wipe it off than to not have enough and have a gap in your window. As you can see, I put down a nice thick bead all the way around it. I use the scraper just to flatten this out along the bottom, just so that way when we press it in, I don't want to have any gaps where you can see all the way through. Now, I'm going to put this scraper down. I'm going to use a glove because it's just messy. And we're going to grab a window. Make sure you have it in the right position. Set this bottom edge in first, set it down, position, and then I'm gonna push all the way around. As you can see, it's already getting everywhere. This is why you definitely want to wear gloves. So now that we have everything pressed on, you can see that some of the urethane came through. It's actually what we wanted. We're going to take our flat edge while it's still wet. We're going to scrape off the excess. So now that we have all the windows in place how they're supposed to be, we got it all pressed down, scraped off any excess that bled over, the last step we're going to do before it has a chance to cure is actually go back through and peel off all the tape. This is going to give you nice clean lines between them. And even if you have a little bit of extra material, it'll act kind of like a window seal. But in order to make your life easier, you peel this off while it's still wet. So after we get all of the edge tape off, we're gonna leave the film still on the windows though, just so that we don't make any messes while it's still curing. You're just gonna let it rest and let it cure for however long it says on whichever type of window weld or other type of urethane that you're using. Alright, and now we can get started on working on the actual process of getting the mounts onto the car. One quick note I want to point out is the soft top is actually still in position on the car. I have the plastics off, that was just for some test fitting stuff, but it will fit on your stock car with the soft top in place if that is something that you're interested in. Now, in order to do the rear hooks, what you'll notice on your car is it will have this plate here. This plate actually has provisions for mounting a rear hook on it. So what you'll do is pop up your rear trunk. You'll take a plastic trim removal tool, and on the front edge, you're gonna get underneath it, pry up, and slide it back. And this is what you'll see. This is the first time that you're going to come encounter with the T40 Torx head bolt. You're just going to grab a T40 Torx either bit or wrench or whatever you have. You can generally find them at most major automotive or even hardware stores. You're just going to loosen this up and take this all the way out. So now that you have the plate off, you're gonna need to take the supplied template, you'll cut this out and place it on there, lining it up with the edges that are on the plate, and this will locate your hole. This is a 1-inch diameter hole that you're gonna need to cut with either a hole saw or a step bit. Now, I've already done this for my car, and this is what you'll end up with. As you can see, it has a hole that's drilled nicely, so that when I place this into position, it lines up and you have the hole lined directly up so that you can install your rear hooks. Now, with the kit comes these rear hooks. They're just going to thread into the hole. As opposed to the bolts that were in place, these actually use a size 5 hex key. You're just going to put that in and tighten it down. Now the center section of this hook is actually rubber. These are made to be adjustable so that you can snug down your top as needed. There's gonna be some adjustment that is gonna be necessary to get a nice tight fit, but once it is in place, you shouldn't have any types of rattles or squeaks or anything like that. Now on the inside of the car, on each side you're gonna have these front striker plates for the hooks that are located on the soft top. These will need to come out. It's once again a T40. You're just going to undo these. And supplied with the top is this front bracket. This bracket just goes in place where those striker plates came out. You're just going to use the same hardware to put these in. When you're installing this, you want to keep them loose at first, so that way when you put the top on, you have a little bit of adjustability before you cinch everything down. Get it to thread it in. So once you have both the rear hooks as well as the front mounting plates on, you can finally move to mounting the top onto the car. You're gonna move the top into position onto the rear hooks, and you're gonna slide it forward into place. So now for the side brackets, they mount on the inside right here onto the top. And that will help hold the top into position and cinch down the edge around the windows. One thing that I have noticed is sometimes you can get a little bit of squeaking from these. So what you can do is take some of PDM and take some Scotch weld. This is, or any type of plastic rubber adhesive, and you can glue this right onto the bracket and trim it out like I have for the brackets for my top. And this will help to isolate any vibrations that might be translated from the top between the body. So one of the common things that you'll see, and this is going to be present on pretty much any aftermarket top, is you're going to end up with a little bit of a gap here. This isn't super critical. A little bit of water can get in there if you're going at speed. If you are worried about that, what you can do is take a little bit of the EPDM that I mentioned earlier and cut it to shape, and it will actually fit. There's a little slot in the factory rubber, and it'll fit into place like that. Now, using a little bit of Scotch weld, you can glue it on, and it'll create a watertight seal. Now that we have the seal on here, I added a little bit of extra urethane to the top just to help the transition from the top onto the rubber itself. And now we're going to get to the point of adding the window seals. To start this step, you're actually going to want to roll up the windows on your car. Now we're going to use the edge of the window here as a guide to where we need to apply the seal. So we're going to take some blue tape and apply it, following right along the edge of the window. You want to do that until you see where this has it, where the lip comes down over top of the window. So one thing I want to point out is when you test install the seal, you want to make sure that the front edge is all the way tucked in, and we're just going to follow the edge all the way around and down. These will be extra long just so that they are trimmed to fit. Once you have the seal trimmed to fit the length that it needs to be, I'm going to use adhesion promoter once again. Once again, this is an optional step, and I'm going to apply it all the way along the edge that the seal is going to be resting on. This will help to ensure that it has the best adhesion. As we apply the seal, I'm going to start with peeling just one end. I'm going to tuck it in up top here on the front, as far forward as I can. Just work it along and push it into place. I'm gonna follow my tape edge just to the edge of the seal. You're gonna have to tuck this last bit in. And push this into place. At first the seal is going to be a bit stiff. You're going to have to push it in a little bit, but what will happen over time is that the window itself will leave an imprint onto the seal to create a better overall watertight seal. And that is the full installation for the hardtop. It's not too difficult. It is very time consuming though. But if you have any questions, please let me know, and I hope this was helpful. The CB3 Fabrication Hardtops for the ND Generation Miata are now available. If you are interested in ordering a hardtop, go to CB3Fabrication.com. And if you would be interested in learning how to drive on a racetrack, Tract offers driving clinics as well as providing several sessions for more experienced drivers. Go to tract.llc to learn more.